Lanfear, she said all the right things, putting that idea of mistrust into Rand and saying, hey, Moraine's been manipulating you from the get. How do you think you ended up in Cairhien? How do you think Loghain ended up there?
It's
She's been lying to you.
it's such a good point, like that she makes, but it's kind of like an unstable point because Rand could have easily have been like, "What about you? You
You're
two
Forsaken.
are two peas in the same pod." Like, and I
Right.
love how she's like, "Yeah, I know you don't have any reason to trust me because of all the lies, but now I'm gonna be honest." Oh yeah, because pathological liars just wake up one day and decide honesty is the way.
If you're enjoying this rewatch podcast, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm here with Laura, and we are on our episode 6 rewatch of the Wheel of Time season 2 podcast. Laura, I'm not pacing, I'm investigating.
I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing about that.
How'd you feel about this one?
God, this episode is like, I want to say this, that as a woman who's experienced trauma, this episode is really like gutting.
It's hitting on so many different
Yeah.
aspects. There's the familial trauma between Moiraine and her sister. Moiraine being told to her face, when your father was dying, you didn't come. You weren't here for the family. He was asking for you. What was so important? And of course, it's her, her journey quest finding the dragon reborn. That's what was so important. She can't say it. And then her sister is throwing, her relationship with Barthanes at Moiraine. It sucks. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg, because when you look at all of the other groups of characters, it's just getting worse
Yeah.
and worse and more depraved and more upsetting.
It keeps going. It never stops. At one point you're like, God, is this gonna end?
Yeah. My first watch through of this episode when it came out,
Tears. Just tears.
the general public, after this episode came out, everyone was like, this is it. This is the episode of the season. I wasn't quite sure how I felt about that statement. It was a good episode, but I think it was just so heavy that it was hard for me to connect to it. Now that I've had time to, like, I've watched it so many times since
Same.
then. It's still upsetting, but now, like today, sitting here talking about it, I'm like, yeah, it might be the best episode of the series that we've gotten yet.
Ooh, I would wholeheartedly agree, but I will say that that like guttural scream that Ryma lets out brings me to weeping every single time.
It got me. It got me. And oh, so yeah, the ending is so much. What got me is how they cut it with scenes of Egwene just getting the snot beat out of her, like kicked, dragged, punched, choked. And then the outside point of view of Nynaeve and Elayne watching Ryma getting collared through that little window. And then that kind of cuts to them holding hands. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't deal with this.
Right?
I can't. It's so much.
When you're watching those moments of like in the end where Renna is really just terrorizing Egwene, I am the kind of person who'd be like, all right, I gotta die out of spite now. I have to. I
Yeah.
have to die. You cannot have me because you are way too wrapped up in having a powerful channeler. Like, now I gotta die so you look like a failure.
Yeah. I felt that watching Egwene and her frustration after all of that ends, where, okay, so I got to get into the water thing, the pitcher, pour the water Egwene thing first, because this is one thing I think the show did really, really well. It's similar to it is in the books, but on like a larger level, the show has been continuously using water as a metaphor for someone's magical capabilities.
Right.
So season 1, Egwene floating in that river. There's other examples that happen, but the idea of Egwene filling up her pitcher and pouring the water into Rhaena's cup is like this metaphor for like her relinquishing her abilities of magic over to another woman. That's great. Very similar to the books, but love how the show just handled
The
it.
symbolism is incredible there.
Yeah. And then her actually breaking to the point where she doesn't see the pitcher as a weapon anymore so that she can actually handle it and pour it, knowing that she's been broken and just screaming in frustration of like, she did break me, like visually that she has been broken. And it's not like an introspective thing, like her looking at herself. She visually sees it. Like you said, I would have been devastated that someone had let me break, like someone had broken me.
Yeah, I would definitely feel the same. But like I said, my like petty spite would inevitably take over. I the only thing that would matter to me is keeping Renna from what she wants.
Yeah. I will say this. I love our Forsaken. I love how over the top and theatrical and entertaining they all are. But what this episode really highlighted for me is that our villains like aren't the Forsaken this season. Like our Forsaken, yeah, they're bad, but you see someone like Renna, you see someone like High Lady Suroth making Loial sing in front of her posse, I guess, and just like all of this depraved stuff happening at that level where it's like the Wheel of Time does villains kind of in a weird way where it's like I love our Forsaken, but like I hate our villains are more like human villains, I guess.
Agreed.
I'm curious about how that will come into play next season if our Forsaken are still going to be as much over the top and theatrical, or if I'm going to genuinely feel the hate that I feel for someone like the Seanchan.
Yeah, it's in all honesty at this point in the show, it's a lot easier to hate the Sean Chen's like Damane system and the sul'dam
Mm-hmm.
in charge of it than it is to like be mad at Ishi and Lanfear. I
Yeah,
mean, they're doing as we see, like Lanfear and Ishi are playing their own game and everybody is a pawn on their board. But at least they're like tricking you into it with the bait of honey. The Sean Chen just dehumanize out of the gate. And like the psychological manipulation and cruelty that's showcased in that Sean Chen dehumanizing system speaks volumes. Like the impact of it is so intense.
it really is. I hadn't given a lot of thought to this up until a few weeks ago after the trailer when I did a discussion video with London and Rita. London said something about she hopes that next season there are still some Shan Chen about because that storyline is kind of unresolved. And I just saw a post somewhere saying that the actress that plays Renna should be back next season. I was so excited about that because, for one, this actress, so good. I think just having such a small role in a show, I mean, we get like what, maybe 10 minutes with her tops, and you're immediately invested in her story. Her and her warder, like that moment where they lock eyes, he's kind of circling her. And, like the camera kind of like slows down as they lock eyes, and she's channeling, and she's just wrecking people with her innate knowledge of how the human body works, like turning that woman's spine into a slinky. God, like
Yeah,
what a
I think it
showdown.
was really awesome to finally highlight the healing Aja and
Yeah,
how they can use those healing weaves in reverse to create harm.
it's wild.
Yeah.
This is one of the aspects that the show did much better than the books, where you're getting that more nuanced thought behind, well, what can you actually do with the one power? How can you weaponize it? And I love that. I love that because sitting there reading the books, I'm thinking, well, how come nobody ever did this? Like it just seems so obvious. They should be able to do that. And Raina does that. And it's great.
Yeah. It's also nice to not like it be like a trope where the healers are super peaceful and can't really protect themselves.
No, that's a great point because you could just fall into that trope of I'm a healer, I refuse to do harm at any costs.
Yeah. And like it's really nice that they're kind of breaking out of that shell with that scene, even though it's like incredibly painful to watch. Just imagine you go into this trying to protect two young acolytes and allow them the opportunity to keep going to save their friend. And the plan is to just hold these people off and die because death seems far better than enslavement. And instead, they manage to collar you anyway.
Yeah, I think that conversation that Renna had with Nynaeve and Egwene was interesting, where she's explaining how she got this collar and the cost of it. Because in the process of getting that collar, not just one of the other Aes Sedai was collared, but it was a sitter of the Blue Aja. And I think that kind of like built up the tension in a way where it was like, oh, okay, so like they came, they were in a group, they got outmaneuvered, and Reyna's already sitting with the cost of that with her. And then you build on that, and it's like, oh, and now she's helping these two young women, giving them an opportunity to get away and getting collared in the process, where she, oh, the moment where she says to Basan, her warder, like, it's time, like,
Don't let them take
kill.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God.
I know. It's, you can really feel why she wants it that way.
Well, yeah, this is such a huge aspect for the books because and the show because you immediately see how cruel, how depraved these people are. You get points of view like from someone like High Lord Turok where he's like, fighting in the light, like very noble cause. The means justify the end, but the Seanchan don't go away. They're not just this here and gone scenario where you see them one book and then that's it. They are here for the entirety of the story. So seeing how that's worked in later on, I think is going to be something that I'm really interested in, especially when you have characters from that continent. They might not all be bad people, but of course, like they're so programmed that they don't know any different, but it's like how do you deconstruct that in a way that's not gross, like
Yeah.
how do you show that in a way because it's walking a very fine line with just so many topics that involve like slavery and just dehumanizing people.
It's interesting that they see themselves as like, I'm not talking about like Lady Suroth, because obviously she's on her own track, but like how Lord Turok is like fighting in the light. Guys, you're enslaving people. What about that is in
Right.
the light?
Right.
To me, the Seanchan come across like imperialist,
Yeah.
and the governmental system is incredibly authoritarian.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see in how that unfolds long term for them, considering all of the other things that are happening on, like, let's call it the global stage of geopolitics.
Mhm.
Because it's not just them, you have other areas that are also, like you have the White Tower gearing up, you have Andor and Cairhien and all these other places. It's the Seanchan just seem to have a jump on it due to their pretty imperialistic ways.
So here's a hypothetical for
Ooh,
you, non-book
my
reader.
favorite.
Say we do end up meeting other people from the Shan Empire who do want to fight for the light. Do you say, okay, we'll use your army, even though you're enslaving people, to fight in the name of the light, or do you say no? Like,
A question of the greater good.
mm-hmm.
Does it serve the greater good? Mm, that's really questionable. Personally, I don't know if I'd want to align with a nation that employs slavery like that. Because how do you know, first of all, how do you know they're not going to be enslaving your Aes Sedai on the battlefield, like as things happen?
Right. What happens the moment the battle is over?
Can they even be trusted? Like, and also, they seem to have some real problems with double agents in their high ranks. And the Aes Sedai have probably already got an idea of that.
Yeah. What do you think a battle would look like if you, let's say, for example, the Seanchan pull up outside the White Tower? Like, what do you think that would look like in terms of a battle, channeler v
A
channeler?
numbers game.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be like a numbers game at that point. The Aes Sedai would have to rely on having more powerful channelers and probably more channelers to combat what seems to be a system that kind of does. I guess I should ask first, does the like, what is it, the Adam, the collar,
Item.
when it's connected between the sul'dam and the Damane, does it actually boost the Damane's power, or is the sul'dam just able to harness the raw power?
I think they're just able to harness the raw power,
Okay.
but I think there's still opportunities where I can you link with one? Honestly, I forget if they can actually link. So like the ice that I could make a circle like what we saw at the end of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if the Seanchan can do that or not with their collared channelers, but regardless, as we see later in the season, the sul'dam can actually channel too. So,
Aren't they just like weak channelers? Like
yeah,
ones
yeah,
who couldn't cut it?
they have the innate ability to channel, but they haven't actually, learned how to channel.
Why does it feel
So,
like this system would have been originated by one of these people, like out of jealousy?
well, it was.
Oh, it was?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the item was created by an Aes Sedai, and it was a jealous Aes Sedai
Okay.
who wanted to. She was a pick me for Arthur Pendrag. So
Oh,
dude
I remember
leaves the
him.
Westlands. Yeah, dude leaves the Westlands. I think his son, or maybe his son's son, I don't remember, ends up in Seanchan. They start up their whole, I guess, coming back to the Westlands for uniting everyone. And there was an Aes Sedai running around out there in Seanchan who made the item for this guy to kind of help his cause. And like since then, they've been using it. They've been using it and perfecting it in a way more tactical way than I think the Aes Sedai of the Westlands could even think is imaginable. So I think like talking about what a battle would look like between the White Tower or, any Westland trained Aes Sedai, the Seanchan have militarized it and they're good at it.
Yeah. The White Tower would probably need to promote all of the Reds into like general positions. And then, yeah, they're going to rely on numbers and like Aes Sedai training specifics from my perspective. But I also, on a deeper level of that, I question if the Aes Sedai have it in them to really take it there, where the Seanchan really have it in them.
They got that dog in
Yeah,
them.
they got that dog in them. Like, how much destruction would the White Tower be willing to enact to win?
Right.
Because a lot of it seems to be like what you would be willing to do.
And I think too, the White Tower has this problem where there's, we already see the sprinklings of it this season. They're already fractured in terms of the Ajas. So you have like the Ajas do what the Ajas want. They're not really working together. And then inside the Ajas, I'm sure there's, rivalries between sisters of the same Aja. So it's like it's already fractured. How do you get everybody on board and working together when, as we see, the Black Aja is here? Like we've got, the Black Aja members in the White Tower. So it's like, oh, God,
Honestly,
scary.
I, you know what kind of baffles me
Tell me.
is the White Tower has to know this is happening. And like, they're seemingly doing nothing about it. And you'd think that like it would be good for them to make an attempt to do something about it in the attempt to win hearts and minds. Cause that's like a big part of,
The PR.
yeah, the PR and turning people to your side that may not be on your side is you got to win hearts and minds. And like the Aes Sedai aren't necessarily good at that.
Do you think that you've met an Aes Sedai yet where you think they might be a better leader than Siuan Sanche.
Oh, I'm not saying that Siuan Sanche is a bad leader. I'm saying that as a whole, I feel like the White Tower focuses on like adherence to their rules versus their PR. And they're coming into a time where the dark is using PR and they're not meeting that at the same level. And that's giving the dark these opportunities to bring people in.
Yeah, and I would say another problem with the White Tower is not so much the leadership because love Swan Sanche, but she's distracted right now. This whole Dragon Reborn thing kind of threw everyone for a loop. So she's busy trying to figure out what's happening with Moiraine. The Dragon Reborn's alive. She finds out this episode. Lan tells her.
Right.
That's, you know what? That's another example, oh my gosh, of Swan Sanche in her carriage where she hears something in the distance, so she's like ready for the attack and she's like channeled these
Her little
leaves of,
like her little hollow knives.
yeah, like they were, I think they looked like little fish, like fish filleting knives.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, oh, like our fish lady. She had her little like fillet knives ready to go. But I loved how that looked like visually. I was just like, oh, so much good use of the one power this episode. And there was a lot
Absolutely.
of it. Rand was channeling with Logain.
Yeah, I think in that episode is kind of like one of the first times that I feel like you get a sense for how much raw power resides within Rand.
Yes.
And it's actually like one of the first episodes where I was able to really like connect with how much torment Rand is experiencing due to the ever present fight for him between Ishamael and Lanfear.
Ooh, yeah.
Because like they're both working for the same side, but they both want to be at the top of that side. So they are like creating factions within factions.
Yeah. Lanfear, she said all the right things, putting that idea of mistrust into Rand and saying, hey, Moraine's been manipulating you from the get. How do you think you ended up in Cairhien? How do you think Logain ended up there?
It's
She's been lying to you.
it's such a good point like that she makes, but it's kind of like an unstable point because Rand could have easily have been like, "What about you?
You
You
were
two
forsaken.
are two peas in the same pod." Like, and I
Right.
love how she's like, "Yeah, I know you don't have any reason to trust me because of all the lies, but now I'm going to be honest." Oh, yeah, because pathological liars just wake up one day and decide honesty is the way.
Ooh, that scene where Rand is like in his nightmare killing all of his friends, and Ishamael is like, this is where you're headed. You're going mad, and this is what men who go mad do. And Lanfear kind of shows up and just kind of like waves her arm and makes Ishamael disappear. That scene and this whole entire sequence right here was really good.
It was. And it was the first time I ever felt like this could be a duo plot between Ishi and Lanfear. Because they could have easily have set that up. Okay, he's gonna come in, do a little torment. I'm gonna come in and save
Save
Rand.
the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that'll make Rand trust me more. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to believe that they would be doing that considering they spend half of their time manipulating people and the other half of their time fighting with each other.
You know what I think? The name of this episode is Eyes Without Pity, which it's a fine episode title. But when Lanfear says let to Rand, let me give you the gift of a dream, I was like, ooh, that line goes hard. The gift of a dream would have been an incredible title to this
Ooh, it would
episode.
have. Yeah, I agree.
I think the acting from Natasha O'Keefe here when she proposes the question to Rand, like, who do you want to see? And so she takes him to see Egwene. That moment when Rand and Egwene connect was too much for Lanfear, so she kind of like pulls him back out again.
Yeah, you know, the first time I watched this episode, I really expected her to have like a DEF CON 1 jealousy episode about that.
I I appreciate how they played it because Rand starts screaming. Like, he wants to know where Egwene is at and what's happening. And she's like, hey, Ishamael has her. And he starts screaming at her, tell me, where is she? Tell me. And his emotional response to finding out Egwene is in danger, she knows she doesn't have him. She knows it. Her eyes welling up full of tears for a minute, realizing that his feelings for someone else are never going to be the feelings that he has for her. Ooh, girl. This is why I said, like, anyone who gets close to Rand, they are in danger.
Right. It's kind of interesting to me, though, that Lanfear came back after all this time just to repeat the exact same story. Loving the Dragon Reborn showing, faint interest, but then ultimately setting her aside. Girl, you waited how many thousands of years for this? And then you came back and just replayed the exact same song? Like you learned nothing from the first
Yeah.
time?
I enjoy Lanfear as a character, as a Forsaken. She doesn't have the intelligence level for me where I'm like, God, I love Lanfear. Just hope that she's around the whole story because
Yeah,
like you said, she's replaying the same story over and over again. This, like, why won't you love me? But she acts unhinged. So, like, why are we surprised?
yeah, I do enjoy her theatrical antics and her
Oh, yeah.
very unhinged personality, but it doesn't have the same depth of intrigue for me as like a Ishamael does.
That mad
But
philosopher.
not just that, but that this all started from him believing that reincarnation was a sham. Like he got here based on feeling like the system is an injustice.
It's valid.
It is.
It's
And I think
valid.
it speaks to why, like, he tends to kind of like be the leader. I mean, how much I get that, like, Lanfear is like dad's favorite, with the dark one. But
Hmm.
I mean, whether she's like the favorite or not, how could you really trust her to get anything done when she's so wrapped up in her own feelings and desires? Where then you, on the other hand, you have a Shamael who you're like, okay, well, he believes in this.
Yeah.
And there's a difference in like people who believe in the cause versus people who the cause just so happens to align with their personal interest.
Yeah. I think she's definitely going to be a wild card next season, but I don't expect anything incredibly like thought provoking from this character where like you know what she wants. The question is going to be, is Rand going to be as much of a dope to like fall back into her web?
I think Rand is too good at the core of him to really fall for it. Like, I think no matter what, like, she would end up pushing him away with her, generally unhinged perspectives and psychotic jealousy. Rand is not going to be convinced to join the dark. He has too strong of a justice and moral center for something like that to happen.
Yeah.
I just don't know if he could be radicalized in the correct ways.
No, not our sheep herder. That's not him.
Yeah.
I think he can be radicalized in other ways.
Oh, absolutely. Within what he finds just, yes, but siding with Lanfear, nah.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me because she seems to really believe she's going to make this work.
Well, that's, Lanfear is gonna Lanfear.
Right.
She always believes it.
Well, I guess obsessions are obsessions for a reason.
Yeah.
You know what's another aspect of this episode that we haven't touched on that I felt was like horribly sad
Tell
was
me.
Lady Suroth forcing Loial to sing in front of everybody. And aside from that, like she made a crazy comment too. At the beginning of the scene, she's like, well, if we calculate wealth by Damane, I'm wealthier than Lord Turok. And I was like, that's some crazy shit to be saying. How do you know that none of these people in the room are planted spies for him? Like, you didn't learn your lesson when he took your nails? Like,
Oh, girly.
you think that he would be like, you know what, Suroth, it's chill. I know we all have bad moments, but then she like proceeds to try and push that, like, I am powerful, I have wealth, by forcing an Ogier to sing, even though like she knows that that is highly, highly inappropriate.
The rage that I felt when I first watched that scene, it never left. My mind goes back to that scene so many times, thinking about the season where I'm like, that really makes me mad. Like,
Yeah.
we've got all of the torture and subjugation, but like that one right there, like, not Loial. Like, why him? Like, why? I mean, why anybody really? But like, Loial is
I
just.
Yeah, I am kind of glad that it started to bite her in the ass,
Yeah.
because as the guests in the room started realizing what they were witnessing, they were like becoming entranced and enamored by it. And she's looking around the room and she's like, oh, this is not going how I thought. And so she's like, I got to shut this down.
Yep.
And she kind of breaks that trance that everybody's in with her loud clapping.
Yeah, she just starts laughing and clapping. I want to talk about that little scene where it kind of transitions into Loial and Ingtar.
Ingtar.
Ingtar is dead set on finding the Horn of Valir. He's got a good idea where it's at, and then he also knows they know where Egwene is at. And I love Loial so much because he's like, yada, yeah, 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 yada, 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 the Horn of Valir, we got to get Egwene.
Yeah.
We got to get her out of there. And Ingtar is like, yeah, well, like, but the horn. And then Loial gives his speech like there's steel beneath that sweet facade or something like that. It goes to the heart of Loial. Like, there's not a bad bone in his body. He's not someone who would even be tempted by something like that. This is a book spoiler, and it's something that was supposed to happen in the show but didn't. I will. Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Of
It's about
course.
Ingtar. Okay. So if you haven't read The Great Hunt, close your ears for a couple of seconds. Cover your ears. Cover your ears. Ingtar is a dark friend. Ingtar is probably one of the people that helped Padanfain get into Faldara.
Oh, that makes so much more sense now.
It was cut.
Why
It
do you
was
think they
cut.
cut it?
I'm assuming, however, it was filmed just didn't test well with like a test audience, or it might have been a situation where they didn't have enough time to really like prop that story up
Okay.
so that when like the reveal came, it was like, okay, like why was he a dark friend? Like, or maybe too many unanswered questions where it felt like it packed enough punch.
Right.
But that's why, like, that last scene in episode 8, he gives up the Horn of Valir and he has that, like, flying leap into death where he sacrifices himself for everyone else to get away. That was, like, in the books, it's him seeing the heroes of the Horn and other things that happen to him in that book make him realize, like, he's chosen the wrong path. So he sacrifices himself, and in the show he is like, for the light and Shanoa, and like that's all you see from him again. And it's like, oh.
Okay.
Ingtar.
So is his arc like dark friend who then turns back to the light?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Honestly, I think the show should have included that.
Yeah. I wonder if people just got too, like test audiences, they're probably a lot of more like surface level watchers. So like maybe there were things that they didn't catch. So like when the reveal happens, they're like, I don't get it.
Yeah, plus like when you're only working with 8 episodes, you really got to limit how many plot lines you have, or else it turns into a speed run.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like some of these short moments do feel like a speed run where I'm like, oh wait. But that's just how it goes.
Right.
So,
What do you, you're going to be surprised by this, but like we haven't really talked about what's going on with Matt in this episode. Where we're at right now is he remains trapped in his mental and physical isolation and struggling with like his feelings of worthlessness and abandonment. And then he links back up with Rand. And then
yeah.
he's put in this position where he's like, we're off to see the wizard. And Min's like, yeah, no, you're not. And then we see him like Rand's waiting at the gate and Mat's just kind of like hiding behind some sort of
Like
like,
shutters.
yeah, stall of some sort, just watching Rand. And I have to wonder in those moments, like, Mat, why don't you just say something? Instead of like allowing people to believe that you've abandoned them, why not just go to Rand and be like, I really want to go with you, but there's been like prophecy that if I do, I'm going to end up killing you. And I don't want to do that.
It's unfortunate, right? Like this question of fate and destiny versus interpretation and free will and
Right.
all of that. But yeah, why wasn't there communication?
Yeah. And I think that's really what makes Matt an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair assessment because if you take the 5 minutes to think about it, if it were me, I would be running to Rand immediately and just spilling everything. The whole story, start to finish. Leandrin, Min.
Yeah. But instead, he does none of that and
Yeah,
hides
that's
and just hides. Like he's always just hiding. And I hope he grows out of this eventually and starts like participating with his friends in this fight that they're all involved in. And I really don't understand what was going through his head when he was like, can't tell Rand. Bro, you are sitting on seriously valuable information and just like goofing off.
right. And Rand has already dropped the line, like, I'm the Dragon Reborn. Matt even has that, like, little, like, haha, like, the Dragon Reborn, like, moment
Yeah.
where he should have said something. You're right. He should have.
It would have taken 2 seconds. You know Rand's the Dragon Reborn. Say something, my guy. Get word to somebody, dude, instead of being like, I'm just gonna harbor all of my sorrows by myself.
Yeah, that it goes back to Ishamael's line where he says to Perrin, the more wolf you are, the more you're mine. And when he talks about Matt, he's like, oh, Matt Cauthon, he was born mine.
Oh,
Like,
that's such a like harsh read down. Like one statement, total destruction of Matt's character.
but we'll see because we've still got a lot to go with Matt. Like, we know how this season ends, but the real question will be next season. Are we going to start to see the emergence of a more intelligent, a more thinking, a more a better Matt
I
Cawthon?
would just take a less self-centered Matt Cawthon.
Yeah.
Like I'd be happy with that.
And Min is in her cup. She's drunk. You can't go. You're going to kill him. That's what I saw. And he was like, see, he's smart enough to put that all together to be like, it was all a ruse from the beginning, from the very beginning. After her just saying, like, you can't go, I saw it. He was like, you've been tricking me from the get. He was able to put all of that together, but couldn't
Couldn't
have,
take the simple step into
yeah,
I should tell somebody because this is tactically valuable information.
right. That scene with Ryma, Nynaeve, and Elayne, where they're doing a little triangle channeling session with the collar.
Mm-hmm.
Nynaeve is able to pick up on some things, and so is Elayne. Elayne is immediately like, there's no latch, there's no seam. So she has like some interesting feelings through the one power that she can pick up on. Nynaeve picks up this. Okay, so just flat out, I love how this went because you're getting two distinct personality traits between these two women via how they channel, via how they think. Elaine's technical description of it is almost like mechanical.
That's
There's
what I
no
was
latch,
just thinking.
there's no seam. And Nynaeve is like, it needs to be healed, like that emotional, like sensing ability about her. And I thought that was just really good.
Yeah, I really like how it highlighted that they're both powerful, but their power moves towards different areas.
What do you think about Elayne? Like, in terms of like her channeling, we haven't really gotten a lot of background. We know like she says to tinker with things. She's making booze, she's finding latches or seams. What do you
Yeah.
think would be like a specialty that you think that she could be doing?
Ooh. I wonder if she's going to get to the point where, are they called? Dude, this is total speculation. And I should have asked some questions before going this route, but we're going anyway.
All
Um,
right, I'm
all
in.
right.
I'm in.
So are they called Tel'aran'rhiod?
Terangrial. Yeah.
Terangrials. Okay. So somebody has to be producing these, right? And it seems to me like her subset of skills would lean her towards being able to produce and manipulate these items.
Okay. No book reader hot take. I love it. I think it's a good one. Yeah. If you could make some Angrial, Terangrial, what would you be making?
Ooh. I don't know. Not a device of enslavement. Definitely not.
Obviously.
Obviously. Can they do like anything? I don't really know what their limits are.
I guess your only limits are what you can come up with your imagination.
Ooh. Oh gosh.
Some of them work on channelers to like boost your strength. Some of them do really kind of like weird things like control the weather. Some of them work being channeled into. Some of them work on their own without the one power. So there's a lot of options.
You know what would be interesting is to make one that kind of acts as a type of facade. Like if you need to travel in secret by having it with you, it changes the outer facade to
Ooh,
the
like a
to
hologram?
yeah, kind of like a hologram. Or so you remember in Game of Thrones, like in the House of a Thousand Faces, the
Yeah.
Temple of the Black and
House of.
White.
Hmm.
You know how when they put the faces on, something that would change your outer form. Think about how
What
you.
if I told you that you can do that with the one power?
Okay, well, then there would be no point for that then. But doesn't that. Does it. Well, like, how does it work with the one power? Is it until you use the one power to change back, or does it have like a time limit? Do you have to kind of keep channeling, like we see Lanfear do in some instances where she's like channeling for like longer periods of time?
I think you have to continuously channel to do it.
Okay, then I'm back to this could be helpful because it wouldn't require you to continually channel. You know what would also be helpful is producing ones that block off the detection of being able to channel. That way you can move in areas where civilizations like the Seanchan are, because we hear them
Hmm.
say like don't channel too much or they're going to know. But something that could hide that from their detection system, very helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, like in Dune, how they have that cloaking
The shield.
spotlight shield? Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that, where
Yeah.
it would protect from outside detection of the one power or your capacity to channel. I think I would just keep making spy gear. Like that seems to be where I'm headed with this is I'm just like, all right, let me trick out all of your blue Aja with like fun spy toys. Ooh, another one that would be a good one is one that allows you to influence someone's perceptions, like their not just their outward perceptions, but like their deeply held ideologies.
I think there's one that
Ooh,
kind of does that.
okay.
There's one that is able to manipulate your emotions
Okay.
or someone else's emotions. There's all kinds of weird ones. So, look, this next season, I'm hoping that we're going deep into like Tel'aran'rhiod, what you can do, the limits there, the dangers there. We're going to see some of that kind of like strangeness. But another thing I'm really hoping for that was kind of prepped with this episode is the different Angrial, Terangrial, Sa'angrial, what all of these objects are capable of. Not all of them, but give us some more weirdness that way. Like show just how many different ways that these objects can be used as a tool, as a weapon, as a, shield, like stuff like that. Because I think that's one of these more technical things from the books that is very interesting, but it would be hard to do in the show due to time. So if they pick a couple of these items, I think we're good.
Okay, yeah. That'd be something I'd really enjoy seeing more of. Because like where we stand right now is like because I haven't read the books, the concept is a little bit abstract for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't have like concrete definition yet because I'm not super familiar with it. So, are there only certain people that can create these objects? Or can technically any channeler do it?
Well, they used to be able to do it back during the Age of Legends, and that knowledge has been lost and forgotten, and nobody can do it anymore. So what you see now is what you've got.
That's a good connection to the line where Lan asks if the Forsaken really have access to the lost knowledge of the Aes Sedai.
Yeah, the Forsaken definitely they're at a much greater advantage due to knowing some of these things. And honestly, these objects themselves are really risky because look, like we saw the Black Aja, we know Lanfear is running around. Now the other Forsaken are running around. What do they have that, our side, the side of the light doesn't have? So with Lan saying like what do they know? Are they really that far above everyone else? Yes, they absolutely are. They have lost knowledge. They have different techniques of channeling that no one in the third age even knows exists. So I'm hoping next season though that is definitely going to come into play.
Yeah, I hope so. It would be really nice to do a little bit of exploring about that.
We'll see. Should we wrap it up there?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We will be finishing it up here in a couple weeks. I think our rewatch, what do you got? Two more episodes. So, yeah, 7 and 8. So, take a minute, like, subscribe if you haven't already done so. Liking the video really helps boost it for people who might not know that it's out there. And we will see you back next week.